Indra, king of gods and the lord of heaven, is in constant pursuit of success and wealth. Lakshmi. But Lakshmi prefers the side of Vishnu. Are you Indra chasing success? Or are you Vishnu with success chasing you? Therein lie the answers to who is a leader and ideal leadership qualities.
Well, Indra really is not a leader, because you see, the definition of a leader here we are talking about is someone, what is Vishnu's role? He is taking care of the world, which means his reference point of action is the world, others, not him. It's not about self-actualization. He's not trying to actualize himself. He's taking care of others, and in just doing that, he becomes a fortune magnet.
Okay.
Indra, on the other hand, is taking care of nobody.
Except for himself.
Self-actualization.
All right. So Indra is self-focused and therefore insecure and therefore chases Lakshmi.
Right.
Vishnu is focused on the other, therefore more secure, and therefore Lakshmi chases him.
No, he's not secure because he looks at the other. He is secure and therefore looks at the other.
All right. And yet when we talk about the creation of the world, we talk about three gods.
Yes.
At least this is popular perception. I may be
Yes,
wrong.
yes.
Brahma, the creator.
Yes.
Vishnu, the god that maintains. And Shiva, the destroyer. Why is Vishnu the most important of these three gods and the most revered as well?
When you're talking about creation, even the word creation, when you use the word creation, there is implicitly we are visualizing the God as it is told in the Bible, creates the world. But in the Indian context, the one who's creating the world is not worshipped. The one who's destroying the world is being worshipped. Now, either we are mad, or there's a problem with our understanding of the words. Creating what? Destroying what? Preserving what is the question to be asked. You see, Brahma's action, when you read the scriptures, is a God who is yearning constantly. He's chasing things because he's seeking to understand who he is. And therefore he creates the world to answer this question of who he is. And when he creates the world, rather than figuring out the answer, he starts chasing it and wants to possess it and want to control it, and he wants to dominate it. And he's lost his identity, he's lost his original purpose, and he's forgotten, and therefore should not be worshipped, because he's yearning, he's chasing the wrong thing. One could say that this Brahma is Aham Brahmasmi, you and I, human beings, we're chasing something and we're losing sight of what we really want, and we have to introspect to figure what it is. On the other hand, the gods who are worshipped are Vishnu and Shiva. Neither of these gods chase the goddess, but the goddess comes to them. Now, the difference between these two gods is, Shiva says, the world doesn't matter. This is all Maya, this is delusion. I shut my eyes to the world and I switch off.
So he gives up.
He lets go. While Vishnu says, well, the world doesn't matter, so let's enjoy it. So it's a question of perspective. Three different characters in mythology who are engaging with three currencies in a very different way. One says, I yearns for Lakshmi, Saraswati and Durga. Yearns, searching for it. That's Brahma. That's you and I. That's an average human being. On the other extreme is Shiva, who just switches off and says,
I don't want any of this.
I don't want any of this. So he's the Vairagi, the hermit.
Right, the ascetic.
Ascetic. And what is he surrounded by? Cold, icy mountains.
Right.
Destruction. He's switched off. And the goddess goes to him and says, you know what, you may have figured it out, but the rest of the world hasn't, so please open the eyes. And so she marries him. So she goes to him and appeals to him and says, you know what, engage with the world, engage with the world. So you have two forms of Shiva, that is Shiva, whose eyes are shut, and Shankara,
whose eyes are open.
Whose eyes are open. He is the benevolent one, the boon-giving one.
So there is still attachment in him.
Engagement in him.
Engagement in him.
The words are important because they have different meanings. Now Vishnu
is the preserver.
Is the preserver. His eyes are always open. So when you go to Vishnu temple, his eyes are always open. He's looking at you and he's amused by you. He's amused because, you see, we are all Brahmas, and he's saying, you know what, your direction is wrong. And he's smiling and he's helping. He is the caring God. He's helping you. Very similar to Shankara.
And so this is what we need to try and be.
This is what a leader should be, which means he has to be wise enough to care. So a leader is someone who enables you to grow materially, L, intellectually S, and emotionally D. That's the role of the leader. And in doing so, grows himself. So your growth becomes his growth.
Well, why is the creator, the man who has helped create all of this, not given equal,
See, what has he created? See, we have to go back to the scriptures. He has created desire. He has created ignorance. He has created the chase. He has created the rat race. Brahma has created a rat race. Would you worship the creator of the rat race? Or will you worship the person who tells you how to step out from the rat race and still have the goddess of wealth chasing you? You decide.
You believe that the various avatars of Vishnu actually represent leadership at different stages of a corporation's life, leadership in different phases of a corporation's life. Is that correct?
Before answering any question on avatars, we have to understand Vishnu. You see, when you look at Vishnu's image, you see, what is mythology? I mean, mythology is a communication of ideas through forms, of ideas that people respected. Now, Vishnu is managing the world, and he has got something called a conch shell,
Right.
which is Shank. Then he has got a wheel on the other side, which is called a Chakra. Then he has got a mace in one hand, a club, which is Gada, and he has a lotus flower called a Padma on the other. Look at it carefully. This is for communicating. Wheel for reviewing, Gada for discipline, and Padma for appreciation. And any good leader does the same thing. He has to communicate, he has to review, he has to discipline you if you're not online, and he has to appreciate if you've done good things.
So it is this image that in many ways represents the ideal traits of leadership.
Ideal traits of leadership. You see, you don't see a rule book anywhere, do you?
No, but if he needed to discipline, he would need to discipline according to a set of rules, right?
Yes, but every rule exists in a context. So there cannot be fixed rules. There has to be a fixed principle. And that context is explained using the concept of yuga in mythology.
Okay.
So they say that when the life cycle of the world has 4 parts, it is going to die, just as human beings will die one day. We have youth, then we have maturity, old age, senility.
And in many ways, this represents the many phases that a corporation goes through as well.
So all the yugas will have different set of rules based on a common principle called dharma. Dharma is a principle,
Not religion.
not a code of conduct, and certainly not religion.
Right.
So we have to understand the principle of dharma, and then we have to understand the concept of yoga, and then you'll understand the role of the avatars. In each of these yugas there is a separate avatar, each one upholding dharma but following very different rules.
Okay.
And that's why, for example, you have Ram, who is ekam patni vrata, faithful to one wife, and you have Krishna, who is a lover of beautiful many women. How do you reconcile the two?
And both are gods.
And both are gods, and both are upholding dharma, but the rules are very different. So you have Krishna, who is Radha and Rukmini and Satyabhama and Jambavati. Ram, only Sita. And Parshuram, there is no wife around. Where is the wife? There is no wife around. So 3 gods, 3 different rules.
So one overarching principle, different kinds of leadership required in different phases of the life cycle of an organization. But all feeding in or all abiding by that one overarching principle. All right. Why then, if all these 4 are equal, they just represent different phases and different styles of leadership, is one greater than the rest? For instance, every time we talk of a perfect society, we call it Ram Rajya. It is supposed to be heaven on earth,
Yes.
right? In many ways.
Yes.
There are many other leaders, there are many other gods. Why is Ram revered so much more than the rest of them?
Remember, that's the only form of God which is visualized as a king. Krishna is not king, he's a king maker. You worship Krishna as a cowherd and a charioteer, not as a king. Ram is the only deity of all the deities in India. There's so many temples in India. There's only one deity who's visualized as a king. That's Ram. So there's only one king we're talking about who's worshipped.
But it can't be his position that draws the faithful, right? The fact that he's king is not instrumental in why he's so revered.
The divinity is indifferent to his role because he is Vishnu. So he's cowherd,
Right.
He's charioteer. Remember, these are...
So why are you laying so much emphasis on the kingliness of him?
Because he is doing what a king is supposed to do. He's living the life of... He's behaving as a king is supposed to be. And that's what Ram is associated with. And what is that it's supposed to be? He is living for the people, to the point that when given a choice between an honest and faithful wife and a cruel subjects, cruel, unjust, unfair subjects, what does the king take a decision? He chooses his cruel subjects and rejects his faithful wife. It's the classic conflict between personal life and professional life. And he chooses the professional life over the personal life. He sacrifices it.
But the professional life for the good of the people, not the professional life for his own personal advancement in the professional life.
Absolutely. If you look at our legends, not mythology, but legends, people who have sacrificed their children are put on a higher pedestal because we know how impossible that is. It's impossible.
So
you cannot
Ram
do that.
Raja is almost the attainment of the impossible.
It is the attainment of the impossible because it is about sacrificing what you love most dearest and love for others.
Why is success so individualistic? When we talk about, in the context of business of course, successful companies, we almost always connect them to one overwhelmingly successful individual. Almost everything about the success of leadership connects to that leader. We rarely praise the board of Apple, but Steve Jobs is God.
Yes.
Similarly for Microsoft, but Bill Gates is God. Similarly for Reliance Industries, Dhirubhai Ambani, though is a legend for what he has achieved. Why is success so individualistic when everything in mythology seems to be talking about the community, the other, the outside?
Okay. Everything in Indian mythology talks about the other and the outside. The Western mythology is a complex combination between Greek ideas and biblical ideas.
Right.
Now, in the biblical idea, there is God and there is prophet. And the prophet brings the rules of God to man, and we have to align to the rules. And the prophet is subject to these rules. He's not independent of the rules. He's not creator of these rules. He's subject to these rules. The Greek model is very different. The Greek model, the hero is someone who challenges the gods, who fights the gods, and who triumphs despite the gods. Okay. Now, when we use the word leader today in common parlance, these words have come from the Western context.
Right.
And when they are using the word leader, they're referring to the heroes of Greek mythology who challenge the gods, that is the status quo, who challenge the establishment and innovate and create something new,
right.
breakthrough. They are the Hercules of modern times. And Hercules is always alone. Have you seen Hercules with family?
No.
Or Theseus or Jason? None of them are with family. They're these individuals, and you never, some of them are kings, but you never hear about their kingdom. You hear about their great adventures. And all our leadership books that we have are basically Greek heroes.
When we're that individualistically oriented, and if the board is not as responsible or as revered, the board is always going to come second to the individual leader.
Yes.
If the board always comes second to the individual leader, let me go back to the conversation we had in the very first episode. How is the board ever going to be able to stand up to that leader?
This is the great Western conflict, the individual versus the community. The individual versus the community.
In the Indian context, how do you apply
It's
the
not achievement
concept of
which makes
leadership?
Ram worthy of worship. It is sacrifice that makes him worthy of worship. So I would actually argue a leader has to begin as Parshuram, then become Ram, evolve into Krishna, and if
finally?
unfortunate, may have to become Buddha or Kalki depending on the situation. These are the avatars. So Parshuram is rule follower, very early. He's like this very strict teacher who punishes you if you break the rules. So it's very early phase in the organization, Krita Yoga, the early days. Then he becomes the model reader who hopes by being a model of sacrifice that people will understand the meaning of sacrifice, because the whole kingdom is watching this great king serving them, having sacrificed his own personal happiness.
So he leads by example.
He leads by example, and eventually becomes Krishna, who is the ultimate coach.
Okay.
He's coaching and creating new talent and hoping that the Pandavas will become like Ram. They don't. They gamble away their own kingdom, thinking that kingdom is property. So he has to put them through a great period of vanavas and sort of repair the damage and get them back. And there's a lot of bloodshed which happens.
Right.
So he's coaching them. And finally becomes Buddha by switches off,
Detaches.
withdraws. Or Kalki, who just breaks the system completely because it's not worth upholding anymore.
So either you withdraw if it's worth sustaining,
Because the kings are there to take care of it, then it's the ashrama. You have become the great ascetic.
or you destroy it because it's not worth maintaining
It's not
anymore.
worth maintaining anymore. And that becomes the Kalki. So it's a very beautiful narrative, which is in a way saying evolution of leadership. It's not becoming one style, it's context. Early phases, Parshuram. Perfect phase, Ram. Then become Krishna. Create talent. And then move out. Go away. The world will continue without you. It has been continuing for
And if it
millions of
doesn't
years.
deserve to continue, it will self-implode.
It will self-implode. So chhod do.
Detach.
Next week on Business Sutra.
Once upon a time, there was an eagle. And the eagle was chasing a dove. And the dove came to a king and told the king that, save me. And the king said, I will save you. And then the eagle said, what will I eat now? So he said, eat another dove. So that's cruel. He says, why is that cruel? He said, to save one dove, why should another dove die? Then he said, okay, then eat a rat. And the eagle said, that's cruel. Why should a rat die to save this dove? So finally the king said, eat me. And he said, you're a foolish king. How long can you feed me? Sooner or later you will die. And I'll have to eat the dove. So you're just delaying its death. This is Dharma Sankat.